With tea dripping from his hair, a young man touches his face in dawning horror. A maid apologizes profusely in the background, but he barely notices. A profound realization strikes him. He is Albin Audrin, a 15-year-old villainous noble, and his future holds nothing but ruin. He now understands that he has been reborn into a fantasy novel as its villain, a character defined by arrogance, insolence, and laziness. This Albin was also a genius who never applied himself, his personality warped after losing his parents at a young age. Looking down at his own overweight body, he sees the grim truth. At this rate, his fate is sealed. A vivid image of this future flashes through his mind. Himself, crawling defeated and pathetic in a filthy back alley. He is certain that he will be ruined. He recalls the catalyst for his downfall from the novel. It all begins at the academy, following the loss of a duel against the protagonist. Determined to avoid dying pathetically, he resolves to change his lifestyle immediately. As he makes this vow, a knock sounds at his door, and he calls out to see who it is. The visitor is an older man in a butler's uniform, who introduces himself as Seabass. Albin recognizes him as Seabass Christian, the steadfast pillar of the household. Seabass explains that he heard a server had made a mistake and came to check on the young master. His butler stops short, a look of utter disbelief on his face. He asks if Albin actually changed his clothes by himself. The question makes Albin realize his misstep. The original Albin Audrin was so lazy that this simple act is a monumental event. Trying to cover his tracks, he tells Seabass not to get emotional over such a trivial matter, claiming it's simply faster to do it himself. Internally, he's moved by the butler's reaction. Shifting the subject, he states that there is something more important to discuss and formally requests Seabass's service. He then reveals his intentions. First, he is thinking about losing some weight. Second, since he knows Seabass has knowledge of swordsmanship, he would like to learn from him. The requests leave Seabass utterly stunned and speechless, only able to utter a shocked gasp. Seabass immediately questions his master's sanity, asking if he was hit on the head. Albin quickly denies it, admitting only that his head got soaked with tea. He panics internally, realizing he must convince Seabass if he is to have any future at all. He desperately searches for a convincing reason for his sudden change. An idea strikes him. He looks his butler in the eye and presents his logic. As he is now, he would be unable to find a wife. Seabass stared, his eyes wide with disbelief. A wife? Was that truly the young master's motivation? He tried to reason with the young master, pointing out that his noble status already guaranteed plenty of marriage proposals. But Albin, lying on the floor, was resolute. He ordered Seabass not to repeat himself and to come at him with full force, as if with intent to kill. He then made a bold declaration, vowing to master both the diet and the sword within a mere 6 months. Seabass watched, taken aback by such firm resolve. Albin then reached for a heavy jug, ready to begin. The butler's expression hardened with determination. He bowed his head slightly, formally accepting the charge. Though unworthy, he, Seabass Christian, would assist his master with all his might. Albin, in the background, let out a cheer, privately acknowledging the arduous task ahead. 1 week later, the training was in full swing. Albin lay sprawled on the ground, utterly spent. He cried out in agony, his feet swollen, arms trembling, and sides aching. Seabass, observing calmly from a distance, simply asked if the young master was ready to give up. The butler's training was relentless. A powerful swing of a wooden sword sent Albin flying backward with a cry. He protested that he was already aware of his weakness, but that Seabass was simply too powerful. Seabass merely smiled, remarking that it was better to build muscle in a balanced manner. He collapsed once more, gasping for air. It was no use. His body refused to obey his commands, and every breath was a fiery agony in his muscles. I give up, he wheezed, utterly defeated. However, Seabass's voice cut through his despair. The butler calmly advised that since he was starting from such a disadvantage, it would be wise to proceed at a slower pace. He then delivered a sobering assessment. At the current rate, it would likely take a full year just to lose the weight and closer to 3 years to achieve any level of swordsmanship. The words struck Albin, whose eyes widened in disbelief. His shock quickly hardened into a grim smile. He pushed himself up, clutching his sword. Acknowledging that the path would be troublesome, he found his resolve renewed. It was still an improvement. He looked towards his butler and requested his continued companionship on this difficult journey. Pleased by the young lord's resolve, Seabass smiles, affirming that's the spirit. He promises to accompany Albin however far he wishes to go on this path. 1 month later, their training is underway. As their wooden swords clash, Seabass critiques his student's swordsmanship, noting it's not bad, but still too slow. Albin, defiant, shouts back that he is not done yet. Another month passes, and the training's intensity increases. Seabass deftly sends Albin flying through the air, chiding him for letting his guard down. Surprised by the maneuver, Albin can only cry out his mentor's name. By the end of the 3rd month, Albin, though panting, manages to hold his ground. He declares that he has finally caught up. Seabass finds the progress enjoyable, privately noting that Albin has always taken this endeavor seriously. Their training then moves to a new location, the mouth of the cave. Albin is shocked to learn there is a dungeon in his territory. Seabass explains that it is a low-risk one with weak monsters, and after 3 months of training, Albin has made significant progress in his mastery. He continues, revealing the purpose of their visit. It is time to confirm whether Albin's sword skills are of any use in practical combat. Seabass wishes to see the results of the training firsthand. Albin realizes this is his final exam. As if on cue, Seabass points out a creature deeper within the cave, identifying it as a goblin, a fairly low-level monster. He explains that while goblins normally move in packs, this one appears to be separated from its group. With a severe expression, Seabass then poses a direct question to his student. Can you kill it? Albin's face hardens as he clenches his fist. In response, he steps forward, his gaze fixed on a lone goblin. He advances steadily, preparing for his first true battle. As Albin engages the creature, Seabass reflects on his student's journey. He had initially believed that the lazy boy's drive would last 3 days at most. He was certain Albin would never follow through. However, he was proven wrong. Albin absorbed every lesson with incredible speed, leading him to this very moment. He swings his sword with focused intensity, a testament to the belief that there are no limits for a hardworking genius. The blade cuts through the air, aimed at his final foe. As the last goblin falls, he stands panting amidst the cavern's gloom. Watching from a distance, Seabass is overcome with emotion, his heart pounding with a forgotten excitement. With tears welling in his eyes, he declares with utter confidence that Albin is truly remarkable, a swordsman beloved by the gods. Albin stands over the bodies of his defeated enemies, his expression grim. Seabass marvels at the amazing, yet terrifyingly cold and heartless, efficiency of the kill. He approaches the young man, his training now complete. Seabass looks him in the eye and states plainly that Albin has grown stronger, and that he has nothing left to teach him. The declaration hangs in the air. Albin, his face still marked by the grime and blood of battle, processes the finality of his mentor's words. His surprise gives way to a surge of accomplishment. He clenches his fist tightly, a grin of hard-won satisfaction breaking through the exhaustion. 3 months later, back at the Ardern estate, the atmosphere is far from calm. Albin, dressed once more in his noble attire, slams his hands on a desk and demands to know if it's true that he has received a marriage proposal. Seabass, ever the composed butler, gently admonishes him for his volume. He recoils for a moment, questioning whether this could truly be considered good news. His apprehension quickly melts into excitement. However, he begins to daydream about finally having a wife, wondering what kind of person she might be, and hoping she is both cute and kind. His daydreaming ceases as a crucial question comes to mind. He turns back to his butler and asks which family has made the proposal. Seabass averts his gaze slightly, covering a small cough with his hand. The butler gives his answer, the Barrow-Ducal family. The name strikes Albin with the force of a physical blow, his expression turning to one of stunned disbelief. He frantically questions Seabass, unable to comprehend why the prestigious Barrow-Ducal family would consider him. The difference in their status is immense. He is merely a baron. He demands to know their reasoning, his voice echoing into the evening as bats take flight from a nearby window. A sudden, chilling memory surfaces. He recalls a detail from the story he knows. The character Albin did, in fact, marry someone. The name flashes in his mind with dawning horror, Letitia Barrow. She is known as a problem child, a young woman whose engagement was annulled due to her misdeeds, leaving her an outcast with no other prospects. The weight of this revelation crushes him. He stares into the middle distance, utterly despondent, wondering what the point of all his hard work over the past 6 months has been. In the end, he realizes he is still on a direct path to his own ruin. As he slumps in defeat, Seabass observes him. The butler notes that the young lady of the Barrow family does indeed appear to have a difficult personality, bluntly calling the situation a pain. Despite this, he offers a simple, almost detached encouragement. Please do your best, Albin-sama. With a look of sheer exasperation, Albin Ardern threw his hands up, asking aloud if he could refuse. The very thought of the situation was a torment he wished to avoid, a sentiment he kept to himself as his butler, Seabass, stood by. Seabass calmly laid out the consequences, suggesting that if Albin wished to turn the powerful Barrow-Ducal family into an enemy, he was welcome to try. The threat only made the situation seem more troublesome in Albin's eyes. Even as a distant maid offered a quiet word of encouragement. The butler pressed his point, questioning why a connection with the Barrow family wouldn't guarantee their own family's safety. Albin shot back, his voice filled with panic, insisting that this very connection was the path to his own ruin. Later, in a private study, Seabass inquired about the specific actions of the young lady in question. He began to recount the latest rumors he had heard. According to the whispers, the lady had embezzled taxes from her family's estate and brazenly brought a young man into the mansion. Seabass continued, adding that she was also a notorious spendthrift who had even dipped into her own fiancé's assets. Listening to the litany of scandals, Albin could only conclude that she sounded utterly unhinged. The weight of this information settled heavily upon him. He clenched his fist, the effort he'd put in, even losing so much weight to alter his destiny, now feeling entirely pointless. Outside the window, the sound of crows echoed ominously. His frustration hardened, his gaze fixed and intense. Moments later, the sound of an approaching carriage announced her arrival. Standing beside Seabass at the entrance, Albin braced himself, whispering that the time had finally come. He couldn't help but wonder what sort of monstrous person would emerge. The carriage door opened, and a single figure stepped out. Letitia Barrow descended, her demeanor poised and her expression unreadable as she moved toward the mansion. As she drew closer, his expectations were shattered. The woman before him was nothing like the rumors suggested. Stunned by her appearance, he found himself thinking she was pretty before managing to offer a formal greeting. "Good day to you." He could only stammer a reply as the young woman introduced herself as Letitia Barrow. She formally announced that she would be in the care of the Audrin family from now on and requested that they look after her. As Letitia finished, Seabass stepped forward, introducing himself as the butler. He offered to show her to her room, assuming she was tired from her journey, and inquired about her attendant. Letitia stated plainly that she did not have one. Her bluntness left Albin momentarily stunned. Ignoring his reaction, Letitia simply instructed Seabass to hurry and guide her. She glanced back over her shoulder, clarifying for the two men that she had come to this place entirely alone. Once she was out of earshot, Albin turned to his butler, asking for his thoughts. Seabass began by diplomatically stating that she was a very beautiful lady, but Albin cut him off, clarifying that wasn't what he was asking. The butler apologized and considered how to summarize his impression. After a moment, while carefully adjusting his white glove, he offered a single, definitive word: odd. Albin immediately agreed with the assessment. He observed that no matter how one looked at it, she sounded completely different from what they had heard. Seabass concurred, adding that her demeanor did not seem to fit that of a girl known for her misdeeds. He elaborated that, if anything, he sensed a certain wisdom from her. Seabass agreed with this conclusion, stating that it appeared there was more to the situation than met the eye. The butler expressed his approval, noting it was good that his master understood so quickly. With resolve, Albin gave him a direct order to look into what had happened to Letitia, but to ensure that no one else knew of the investigation. Seabass acknowledged the command. Albin added that he would try to get as much information out of her as he could, though he was wary of getting involved in the Barrow Duchy's internal problems. Despite the mystery, he admitted to himself that he was relieved, though the reason for his relief remained unspoken. An unseen observer remarks on Letitia's surprisingly refined demeanor. They had expected some uncultured fool, but found Letitia to be the very picture of grace. The observer continues, suggesting to Albin that Letitia might even make a fitting wife for him. He blushes at the thought, admitting to himself that he would be quite pleased if that were to happen. His hopes are quickly dashed during a meal. While he attempts to tell a story about adventurers and mimics, Letitia completely ignores him, her expression unreadable as she eats. As she finishes and politely thanks them for the meal, his frustration boils over. He stands abruptly, shouting her name, but she prepares to leave without a glance in his direction. He watches her depart, complaining aloud that she still refuses to talk to him. Seabass, standing nearby, offers a dry opinion. Perhaps the joke was simply too boring. Albin snaps back for him to shut up. He reveals that Letitia has been ignoring him for 3 whole days. Seabass suggests that Albin's reputation has likely changed in her eyes, but Albin wonders if she is merely on guard against him. Clenching his fist, he resolves not to back down. His renewed determination leads him to approach her again. He calls out, inviting her for a walk, but she pointedly turns her head away in silent refusal. He persists, hurrying after her and trying to find common ground by asking about her interests in herbs or potions. His repeated calls go completely unanswered. All of his attempts have ended in failure. He slumps over a desk, completely and utterly defeated. He remains there, lamenting that nothing is working. No matter how much he tries to talk to her, she refuses to respond. All he wanted was, at the very least, a simple conversation. He concluded that there was only one method left. Without taking drastic action, he would never understand what she was dealing with. He approached the large double doors to her room and knocked firmly, calling out, "Letitia, do you have some time?" Inside, Letitia sat reading, pointedly ignoring him. Realizing he was being ignored again, Albin's demeanor shifted. He warned her that staying inside all the time was bad for her health and suggested they go out. With a grimace, he resolved that if she wanted to play it this way, he would play along, just as a villain would. With a sudden, violent kick, he shattered the doors, bursting into the room amidst a spray of splintered wood and glass. The explosive entrance left Letitia utterly stunned, her eyes wide with disbelief as she could only gasp. "What?" He stepped calmly through the wreckage. "Pardon me," he said. Letitia, trembling with anger, demanded to know how he could do such a thing. Albin casually promised to have the door repaired, but she shot back that the door wasn't the problem. Her indignation boiled over. With arms crossed, she shouted at him for daring to barge into a lady's room without permission, demanding that he show some shame. He responded with a sly, confident smirk. "Sorry, but I'm actually a scumbag, you see," he admitted. He declared that if it's to achieve his purpose, he'll even barge into a woman's room. Stunned, she could only question what his purpose was. He leaned forward over the table, separating them. Without further ado, he announced with a charming smile, "Letitia, go on a date with me." His audacious demand rendered her completely speechless, her mind reeling as she uttered a faint, confused, "Eh." Outside, Albin Audrin stretches his arms wide, remarking on how refreshing the air is. He turns to Letitia Barrow, asking for her agreement. With a cold expression, she concedes that she might feel the same way if he were not present. He realizes she is still completely on guard around him. He imagines her internal insults, labeling him as scum. With a sigh, he reflects that if their roles were reversed, he wouldn't be able to trust someone like Albin Audrin either. Putting the thought aside, He points toward a path leading up the mountain, suggesting they follow it to see some beautiful scenery. After a brief pause, Letitia quietly agrees. As they proceed, she suddenly stumbles on the uneven ground. She calls out for him to wait, admitting she is not used to walking on mountain paths. She chides him for not warning her beforehand if he had planned such a walk. Albin apologizes and, asking for her pardon, reaches down towards her. In a swift motion, he lifts her into his arms, bridal style. Letitia lets out a startled cry. He smiles, explaining that this way, she will not sprain her feet. Held firmly, she immediately tells him not to touch her. Albin reassures her that he won't do anything strange, as it would only cause trouble, though her words seem to sting. He internally marvels at how easily he can carry her, mentally thanking Seabass for his training. At the same time, Letitia thinks that even if he isn't doing anything weird, it feels like he's thinking something weird, a thought that strikes Albin with uncanny accuracy. Continuing on, he excitedly tells her to look ahead, announcing that their destination is now visible. Letitia looks up from his arms, curious. The sight before them is a breathtaking, sprawling landscape. Letitia stares a quiet wow, escaping her lips as she takes in view. Albin watches her, a gentle smile on his face. She looked at him, surprised, as he explained that from this vantage point, they could see the entirety of the Audran territory. He earnestly told her he had truly wanted to show it to her. He continued, adding that after all, they would be taking care of this territory together from now on. The statement seemed to catch Letitia off guard, her eyes widening slightly. As they walked, she reflected on the rumors she'd heard, that Albin Audran was an arrogant and insolent thug. She remarked aloud that he was quite different from what she'd been told, causing him to pause in confusion. He turned back to her with a grin, correcting her assessment. The rumors were missing the fact that he was lazy, he declared, and also, he was no mere thug. His grin widened, revealing sharp teeth as he pointed a finger upward. "I'm a villain," he proclaimed, much to Letitia's amusement. She smiled warmly, a radiant expression that left Albin momentarily speechless. She playfully countered his claim, pointing out that villains don't typically call themselves villains. Her laughter echoed by the water's edge. As he watched her wade into the shallow stream, Albin thought to himself that her laughter was the best sound in the world. She called out his name, her face bright with joy. She told him the water was cool and pleasant, a refreshing change of pace for a city girl, a sentiment he quietly acknowledged to himself. Now sitting together by the water, she asked if asserting his dominance over a city girl made him feel good. He grinned, admitting he was just joking and hadn't been trying to do that at all. He then grew more serious, addressing her by name. He pointed out that they didn't really know anything about each other yet, and suggested they take this chance to introduce themselves properly. Letitia sighed, stating she wasn't really interested, but Albin insisted that he was. He listens as Letitia Barrow formally introduces herself, stating her favorite foods are black tea and scones, and her hobby is playing with children. He remarks that she must like kids, and she clarifies that she doesn't hate them, at least. He then announces it's his turn. He introduces himself as Albin Audran. His favorite food is steak, though he is currently avoiding it to watch his weight, and his hobbies are sword practice and simply lazing around. Letitia muses that she can't tell if he's a hard worker or a slacker, a sentiment he laughingly admits he wonders about himself. He continues, telling her he likes her just as she is now, and jokes that he must be a hard worker to have transformed her body so. Their lighthearted exchange is shattered by a deafening roar. From the woods emerges a massive, monstrous killer bear. The bears of these woods are a known nuisance, often eating crops. Letitia panics, asking why he's explaining this now and urging him to run. The beast roars again, its gaze locked on her. Albin realizes it's targeting Letitia and calmly draws his sword, shielding her from the threat. With a cold expression, he steps between her and the monster. In a flash of steel, he decapitates the bear, declaring that pest like it should stay away from Letitia. The massive body of the beast collapses behind him. He sighs, lamenting that their conversation had finally been going well, then turns to Letitia to ask if she is all right. She trembles, assuring him she's fine, but was just startled, as she'd never seen a monster before. Watching her, Albin internally scolds himself, realizing that, of course, she would be scared after such an attack. Acting on this thought, he quickly closes the distance between them and gently takes her by the shoulders. Startled by the sudden movement, she looks up and whispers his name. He looks down at her, his expression filled with sincere relief. He tells her softly that he is so glad she's safe and sound. His genuine words seem to break through her shock. Her eyes well up as a single tear begins to form. She gently squeezed his arm, calling his name to get his attention. He turned, confused by her question. With her gaze lowered, she asked him why he was being so kind. He could only ask what she meant. She looked up at him, her voice filled with genuine confusion, and questioned if he wasn't simply being forced into a political marriage with her. His serious demeanor melted away into a playful smile as he declared his desire to flirt with his cute wife. Unconvinced, she pointed out that he could have simply secured her family's support without involving her personally, demanding to know his true reasons. The smile vanished from his face, replaced by a cold, calculating intensity. He revealed his true intention was not affection, but investigation, to discover what she had done and who she had provoked. He admitted that his previous behavior was merely a facade. Taking her hand, he offered a piece of advice, explaining that while she was once unrelated to his troubles, she was now involved. He warned her that ignorance would be her safest course of action. Her expression hardened with resolve. She looked down at him and delivered a startling ultimatum. If he truly wished to keep the Audran family safe, then he must treat her badly. The unexpected declaration left him utterly stunned. Letitia Barrow recalls her childhood. At the tender age of 5, she learned she had a fiancé, Duke Morrow Bertley. As a little girl, she innocently wondered what kind of wonderful man he might be. The reality, however, was that Duke Morrow was an absolute fool. He lived a life of pure decadence, surrounded by women, laughing boisterously as he encouraged them to take as much as they wanted, hinting at what he expected in return. This memory leads to a specific confrontation. Letitia enters a room to find Morrow lounging with his companions. As they notice her arrival, he addresses her without even turning, dismissively asking what she wants. She stands before him, her expression firm, and demands he listen. She explains that the rising taxes have become a severe burden on the people of his domain, warning that if things continue at this rate, they will face ruin. He scoffs at her plea. With a dismissive gesture, he belittles her, stating that a mere pipe woman from the Barrow family has no place meddling in politics. The insult, reducing her to a simple political tool, visibly stuns her. Her shock gives way to silent fury. Letitia clenches her hand into a tight fist, the fabric of her dress wrinkling under the pressure of her contained rage. Humiliated, she turns and walks out of the room. As the doors begin to close behind her, she can hear the other women mocking her, one repeating his cruel term, pipe woman, while the other feigns pity, unable to stop laughing. Once alone, her composure breaks. She leans against the wall, tears of frustration and sorrow welling in her eyes. The painful truth settles in. This man is her precious fiancé, the one she was taught to dedicate her entire life to since childhood. However, beyond her personal suffering, the plight of the people remains. The streets of the domain show clear signs of poverty and neglect, a stark visualization of the very problem she tried to address. This reality seems to have spurred her into action. Now, under the cover of foliage, Letitia moves with stealth, peering around a stone corner with a look of cautious determination. She witnessed the grim reality of the streets. A child wailed for their father, laid to rest in a simple coffin. Another begged for just a little food. In the chaos, a man caught stealing cried out that his own child was sick, his desperation echoing through the coughing crowds. As she watched from the shadows, she overheard a family's quiet despair. It was the 12th time that month they had no food left. This grim realization led her to a vault, where the clanging of coins filled the air. With a determined swallow, she understood that at this rate, something had to be done. She thought of the people's taxes, clenching her fist. If Morrow was just going to waste them, then she would have to intervene. 3 years passed. The scene shifts to a grand hall, filled with nobles dancing and conversing at a lavish ball. Amidst the murmuring crowd, Duke Morrow Bertley seized the attention of the room. With a theatrical gesture and a malicious grin, he announced to Letitia Barrow that, as of that day, their engagement was officially annulled. He scoffed as she stood, stunned, in the center of the floor. She could only ask what he was saying. His voice dripped with condescension as he laid out his accusation for all to hear. He claimed that squandering their wealth wasn't enough for her. She'd had the audacity to embezzle tax money. He smirked, asking if she truly thought he wouldn't notice. The accusation sent ripples through the crowd. They whispered in disbelief. Tax embezzlement from a member of the esteemed Barrow family? Letitia stood frozen, the weight of their stares pressing down on her. He leaned closer, his expression cold. Whatever her reason, he declared, stealing is stealing. Overwhelmed, she tried to protest, to explain that she was just trying to... With another woman pressed against his side, Duke Morrow pointed dismissively, declaring that Letitia no longer had the right to set foot in his territory. The woman at his side squealed with delight, praising how cool he was. Upon seeing this, she clenched her fist. She recognized the woman with him. It was the woman from that time. The realization settled in her heart like a stone. Her mind drifted back to her childhood dreams. She remembered herself as a little girl, bidding a good day to Bertley Sama, envisioning a future she now understood she would never see again. That future was now gone. She bit her lip, telling herself she had no right to cry. From across the hall, Morrow's voice boomed, demanding to know why everyone was just standing around and ordering them to hurry up and get her out of there. Despite the humiliation, she looked up with resolve. She understood. She had done what she did knowing full well what the consequences would be. Half a year passed. At the Barrow household, Letitia was informed of her new fiancé, Audran. Every noble had heard the rumors that he was the worst kind of aristocrat, arrogant, selfish, and lazy. She couldn't help but feel this was some form of divine punishment for her sins. However, the reality of Audran was completely different. He had been nothing but kind, expressing his gladness that she was safe and sound. He promised they would take care of the territory together from now on, and had even asked her on a date. Tears streamed down her face as she remembered. He saw her for who she truly was. He had even believed in her. It was for that very reason she couldn't get involved. She watched him from the shadows, determined not to put Audran in danger. The thought of losing something precious again, of having her hopes shattered once more, she hated it. She hated all of it. Overwhelmed, she collapsed in her room, clutching her chest. Tears flowed freely as she was left with a single, desperate question. What was she supposed to do? In a grand, sunlit hall, Seabass informs Albin that it seems Letitia was framed in the matter. Standing further down the corridor, Albin quietly acknowledges that he has heard enough. He turns, his expression hardening into a chilling smile. A single, dark thought consumes him. How should he kill the man responsible? As Albin's mind races with violent possibilities, Seabass calmly interjects with a simple no. He explains that the summary, that Morrow framed Letitia for his own sins and then cast her aside, is incomplete. There is more to the story, and he is not yet finished explaining. The butler then reveals a startling truth. Letitia did, in fact, have a hand in the Bertley family's assets. He confirms that, at the very least, that part of the accusation was not false, leaving Albin utterly shocked. He slams his fist down, shouting in disbelief. It's impossible, he insists, convinced there is no way she would ever do something like that. Seabass urges him to calm down, reiterating that while it is true, she had a reason. Leaning over the table, his anger momentarily checked by curiosity, Albin demands to know what that reason was. The explanation begins with an image from the past. Letitia, smiling warmly at a delighted young child. Seabass reveals the full truth. Letitia had been embezzling taxes from the territory to fund a shelter for abandoned children living in poverty, as shown by a memory of her serving food to a room full of them. As Albin processes this, Seabass confirms it. Letitia was stealing for the children. He adds that she had also been recklessly dipping into the Bertley family's assets to help the poor and raise their standard of living. A quiet realization dawns on Albin as he recalls that she always did seem to like children. He straightens up, overwhelmed. My goodness, he murmurs. He now understands that Letitia has been doing everything to clean up the mess left by Morrow's incompetence. He realizes her recent attempts to push him away were to keep him and his family safe, a selfless act that solidifies his resolve. He stood in silence for a moment, processing the revelation. Then, he called out his butler's name. From the far end of the hall, Seabass turned and acknowledged him, asking for his master's command. He then asked what Seabass truly thought after hearing the whole story, encouraging him to be honest. The butler did not mince words. He stated plainly that, to put it coarsely, the entire situation was complete bullshit. A dark, predatory grin spread across Albin's face. He agreed completely with his butler's sentiment. Clenching his fist, he asked for Seabass's assistance, vowing to show the scumbag who framed Letitia what a real villain can do. Letitia pauses a piece of bread in her hand, her expression one of disbelief. She asked for clarification, and Albin, seated across from her, calmly confirms her suspicion by poking the table. He states plainly that he was the one spreading the rumors. He explains his motive with a confident smile, to clear Lady Letitia's name and settle her regrets. He has started a rumor that Albin Audrin is plotting his revenge against Duke Morrow. She stammers, barely able to form the word "you," as he leans back, confirming that yes, is that kind of rumor. Her composure breaks as she stands abruptly, warning him that such an action will inevitably draw Duke Morrow's unwanted attention. Albin, however, remains perfectly calm, simply telling her to settle down. He then reveals there is more to his plan, stating that he is spreading another rumor as well. Letitia, taken aback, can only ask what he means. He elaborates on the second, contradictory story he has put into circulation, that he and Lady Letitia are not on good terms, and that he intends to secretly pay Duke Morrow a large sum of money to have her disposed of. He concludes his explanation with a sly grin, adding the phrase, or so the story goes. She voices her confusion, pointing out that the second rumor is the complete opposite of the first one. He leans forward, his expression sharp and knowing. He explains that this contradiction is precisely what makes the plan perfect, because rumors are most effective against someone who is hiding something. Meanwhile, at the Bertley estate, Duke Morrow sits amidst piles of coins, reacting with clear agitation. He questions the conflicting reports he's received, exclaiming that the latest news is the total opposite of what he had heard before. He listened as the rumors swirled around him. A noblewoman recounted the tales spreading through town, that he had an awful reputation, that he was working Letitia to the bone, or worse, had her imprisoned. The woman seemed confused by the conflicting stories, but he simply leaned back with a confident smile, suggesting that the rumor of them not getting along could very well be true. His mind raced, piecing together his own version of the truth. He pictured Albin Audrin, a man he considered to have the absolute worst personality, and concluded there was no way a strict woman like Letitia would ever be a good match for him. The thought even crossed his mind that Albin might go so far as to have her killed. Meanwhile, the architects of his confusion were assessing their next move. Letitia pointed out that they were still just rumors, and that they needed something more decisive. Albin, taking a sip of his tea, agreed, calmly stating that Morrow should be panicking right about now. He set his cup down, his expression turning serious as he looked directly at her. This, he explained, was exactly why he needed her. Her hands tightened into fists. She apologized, but refused his request, stating she could not drag the entire Audrin house into a conflict born from her personal revenge. He remained unfazed by her refusal, insisting that this was not just about her revenge. He declared that he wouldn't be satisfied if the situation continued, revealing that he knew the truth behind every bad thing she believed she had done. She looked away, still burdened by her past, insisting that she did, in fact, commit those crimes. Albin calmly countered, stating that everything she did was for the sake of the people in her territory. She turned back to him, questioning if knowing the truth had led to regret. With a confident smile, he denied it completely. His smile widened slightly as he clarified his position, stating that, in fact, the opposite was true. He explains to Letitia that knowing more about her has actually put his heart at ease. She sits across the table from him, listening intently to his unexpected reassurance. Placing his hands gently over hers, he declares that his heart is already set. He makes a solemn vow to cherish her for the rest of his life. His gaze remains fixed on her as he proclaims she is truly worthy of being his wife, and that he will never let her go. He swears an unbreakable oath. He will never betray her, not even if heaven and earth were to turn upside down. His profound declaration moves her to tears. Overwhelmed with emotion, she can only whisper his name. His expression shifts, hardening with resolve. He promises to make the one who caused her so much pain pay for his actions, stating that this is exactly why he can never forgive Morrow. She wipes away a tear, a faint, wry smile touching her lips. With a touch of irony, she remarks that his noble words are hardly fitting for someone meant to be a great villain. But perhaps the greatest villains are, in fact, those who treasure the ones they love the most. Their shared understanding solidifies in the quiet room, with Seabass standing watch. Sometime later, within the Audrin territory, stand the vast food storage warehouses. Inside one of the warehouses, Letitia waits amidst towering shelves of supplies. The sound of a footstep breaks the silence as a man's voice remarks that he has kept her waiting. The man who has arrived is none other than Duke Morrow Bertley, a condescending smirk on his face. He addresses her simply as Letitia, a familiarity that she internally notes is as disrespectful as ever. The confrontation she anticipated has begun. She watched as Duke Morrow Bertley held up a letter, expressing his surprise that she had actually sent one. In response, she confirmed that she had enough, stating she could no longer live as Baron Audrin's wife. Morrow mockingly held up the document, remarking that it was less a letter and more a cursed item, filled with complaints about the Baron. She pleaded with him, calling him a much better man than her husband could ever be. She offered to apologize for everything if he would just get her out of the Audrin house. The noblewoman at Morrow's side then asked if Baron Audrin was truly so terrible, to which Letitia simply confirmed. Morrow listened, a thoughtful expression on his face as he processed her apparent misery. He turned to his companion, asking if she heard Letitia's words, before erupting into a fit of derisive laughter. The noblewoman looked on, confused by his sudden outburst. His laughter was cut short by the arrival of a figure he identified aloud, Baron Audrin. Letitia stared in disbelief at her husband's sudden appearance. She demanded to know what Morrow had just said, but he simply revealed a crucial fact she hadn't realized. He had also been in contact with her husband. He elaborated on his scheme, explaining that while rumors of their constant fighting were circulating, her letter was the final confirmation he needed. With a cruel smile, he declared that the moment she begged him for salvation, she had sealed her own fate. He then confessed his true feelings, admitting he had hated her from the very beginning, dismissing her as an uptight woman with no charm whatsoever. As Morrow gloated, Albin stepped forward, placing a hand on his shoulder. He acknowledged that while Morrow once saw her only as the young lady of the ducal Barrow family, and that it had taken great effort to cancel their engagement, the person Morrow had just betrayed was now his own reliable ally. He pointed towards Duke Morrow, whose face was a mask of confusion. The Duke stammered, asking for his orders, to which Albin simply replied, "Right." At this, Duke Morrow's confusion twisted into a cruel smirk. He turned his attention to the seemingly terrified Letitia Barrow and issued a chilling command to Albin. "Kill Letitia Barrow. Kill her." The order was met not with obedience, but with a wide, eager grin. Albin declared that he had been waiting for Morrow to say just that. In a blur of motion, he lunged forward, not at Letitia, but at the Duke's own guards. His blade flashed, cutting them down in an instant. As the Duke and his companions stared in disbelief, Albin calmly stood beside a composed Letitia. He complimented her on her incredible acting, and she, in turn, confirmed that their plan had worked perfectly. Letitia then turned her gaze to the dumbfounded Duke, a sly smile on her face. She feigned humility, stating she was very honored to receive such praise, leaving Morrow to gape in the face of his utter defeat. In a vast storeroom, Duke Morrow Bertley storms towards Albin Audrin, his face contorted with rage. He points an accusing finger, demanding to know if this was all part of Albin's plan. An unfaint smile plays on Albin's lips as he calmly questions the accusation, reminding the Duke that he was the one who first tried to frame Letitia. With a swift, fluid motion, he unsheathes his sword and levels it at Morrow. His eyes are cold as he declares that he will not forgive him. He vows to make Morrow feel the same despair that Letitia was forced to endure. At the threat, Morrow begins to tremble and sob. Recovering a sliver of bravado, Morrow points out that their collusion is treason, a serious crime. The noblewoman at his side agrees, questioning if a mere baron and a disgraced noblewoman truly believe they can escape punishment. Morrow smirks, confident he has regained control. His confidence shatters as a stern, imposing figure with an eye patch steps into view. The newcomer suggests that perhaps it is time to solidify Baron Audrin's position instead. Morrow looks up, stammering in disbelief. The man commands Duke Morrow Bertley to stand down, stating that any pretense of ignorance is useless. He introduces himself, Hux de Crayon, highest honorary knight commander of the kingdom's Knight Order. Morrow is aghast, wondering aloud why Lord Crayon would be in such a place. Lord Crayon explains his presence is due to an invitation from his friend, Seabass, for a trip to the Audron territory. He continues, stating that by sheer coincidence, he overheard Morrow ordering the murder of the Barrow ducal family. As Morrow begins to deny it, Seabass steps forward with a letter he claims to have stolen from Albin. Panicked, Morrow snatches it, insisting it's all a plot concocted by Albin. After reviewing the letter, Lord Crayon clarifies that it contains no mention of killing. It only states that if Morrow wishes to be rid of Letitia, Albin would lend a hand. Albin feigns ignorance, asking what they're even talking about. Letitia observes him, realizing the truth. He is a truly wicked man who ensured Lord Crayon overheard the verbal command while leaving no written proof of his own complicity. With the facts laid bare, Lord Crayon points towards the Duke and orders his knight to take Morrow Bertley into custody. Morrow stares at the incriminating letter, his expression one of utter defeat. As the knight approaches, he makes a desperate, final gambit. Throwing out his hand, Duke Morrow Bertley roars that he hereby challenges Baron Albin Audron to a duel to restore his honor. His challenge was met not with fear, but with a grim smile from Albin Audron. Though Albin considered it a pain, he realized this was the perfect excuse to defeat Morrow fair and square. With the duel accepted, Knight Commander Hughes de Crayon announced that he would serve as the official witness. As the combatants faced each other, Morrow seethed, vowing to kill Albin. Before they could begin, Albin interrupted, stating he had one question to ask first. He asked Morrow if he had any intention of apologizing to Letitia, suggesting that a sincere apology might lead to a more peaceful resolution. Enraged by the very idea, Morrow screamed in defiance and lunged forward, sword first, telling Albin to die. The furious attack was met with a brutal counter. Albin declared he would no longer hold back as he shattered Morrow's nose with a powerful blow. Clutching his face in pain and disbelief, Morrow stammered while Albin coldly taunted him, asking what happened to his earlier threat. Staggering, Morrow swung his sword wildly, unable to land a single hit. He screamed in frustration, questioning how the lazy Albin Audron could be so strong. Dodging with ease, Albin revealed that he had been training for the past half-year before slamming Morrow to the ground. Towering over the fallen Duke, he began to explain. He told Morrow that while he was out carousing and making his subjects suffer, Letitia was doing her best to help the people and prevent his ruin. As Letitia watched with a pained expression, Morrow could only stammer in response. He silenced Morrow's attempt to speak, continuing his condemnation. Albin stated that nobles are merely leeches who depend on the commoners, a fact Letitia understood. She took risks to save the Bertley territory, but Morrow, as Albin twisted his arm, the Duke screamed in agony. His lecture reached its damning conclusion. In the end, Albin declared, all Morrow had done was trample on Letitia's feelings. With that final pronouncement, he delivered a powerful kick, sending the Duke flying across the hall. The kick sent him sprawling, but Morrow scrambled back to his feet, consumed by a desperate fury. Screaming for Albin not to mess with him, he raised his sword for one last, reckless charge. His desperate charge was met with a single devastating blow. Albin's blade flashed down, severing Morrow's right arm at the elbow and ending the duel in a spray of blood. He stood over the fallen Duke, whose screams of agony echoed across the grounds. As Morrow clutched the stump of his arm, Albin's voice cut through the air, cold and sharp. He asked if Morrow had finally tasted the despair that Letitia had been forced to endure, and with a chilling finality, declared that the Duke would die right there. Just as he prepared to deliver the final blow, a gentle presence enveloped him from behind. Letitia wrapped her arms around him, her expression peaceful as she held him close. She pleaded with him, her voice soft but firm, telling him he had done enough. With tears welling in her eyes, she warned that taking another step would stain his very soul. Her words broke through his rage, and he could only utter her name in stunned silence. The tension dissipated. Letitia looked up at him and offered a sincere thank you, admitting she never imagined he would become so enraged on her behalf. From the sidelines, Lord Crayon observed the exchange with a knowing smile. An official's voice boomed across the dueling grounds, formally declaring Albin Audron the victor. Albin turned to Letitia, questioning if this outcome was truly enough for her. She affirmed that it was, explaining that simply achieving her revenge was all she needed. She then complimented his earlier performance, calling his acting quite wonderful and musing that they would make a good couple. Albin readily agreed, suggesting they aimed to become the most villainous couple in existence. The idea brought a smile to both their faces, as Letitia considered the pairing of a villainous lady and a great villain to be a perfect match. And so, a new pact was formed, built on shared vengeance and a mutual understanding. They would stand together, evil upon evil, the most villainous couple. 1 month after the duel with Morrow, the day of the wedding has arrived. Inside a grand room, Albin Audron stands frozen, his hand covering his mouth in a state of shock. He questions why this is happening, his nerves getting the better of him. His butler, Seabass, approaches and firmly tells him to get a hold of himself, reminding him to act in a manner befitting a groom. He sighs, admitting he wasn't even this nervous during his first goblin subjugation. The entire ceremony came about because Letitia suggested that since they were already husband and wife, they might as well have one. Seabass considers this a good thing, a grand new journey for them both. Winking, He tells Albin that he needs to feel nervous, otherwise Letitia would surely be disappointed. His butler's words seem to work. Albin claps his hands to his head, newly determined. He declares that he'll do it, motivated by the thought of seeing Letitia in a wedding dress, certain she will look incredibly cute. Seabass remarks that this reminds him of Albin's father, who was also terribly nervous on his wedding day and had to hit himself to snap out of it. Albin finds the story nostalgic, though he admits he can't quite imagine his parents at that age. Hearing this, Seabass bows deeply, his voice thick with emotion. He states that being able to attend the weddings of 2 generations of the Audran family fills him with pride. Albin looks on, touched, and replies that hearing Seabass say that feels like the greatest honor he could ever receive. He pauses, then begins to add, but to me, he finishes his thought, telling Seabass that he thinks of him as a father. The old butler is stunned in his silence, his eyes wide. Albin smiles, admitting that all of Seabass's effort was worth it, even though he was a troublesome brat. He feels truly happy now. Overcome with emotion, Seabass begins to weep as Albin reminds him that it's time to go. Meanwhile, in another room, Letitia is being attended to by a noblewoman. The woman asks if she is feeling lonely, but Letitia reassures her that she has calmed down. She reflects on the fact that none of her own relatives are present, but the kindness of the people in the Audran barony has kept her from feeling alone. As she touches the necklace at her throat, she comes to a realization about why she felt no nerves during her engagement party with Morrow. She understands now. The heart-throbbing sensation she feels in her chest is because she is marrying someone she truly loves. While vague anxieties about the future still linger, whether they will make a good couple, she knows her current happiness far outweighs any of those worries. As she basks in this feeling, Albin peeks through a curtain, a wide, happy grin on his face that mirrors her own joy. Letitia, however, turns to Seabass, informing him that her flower veil is missing. She remarks that this absent-mindedness isn't like her at all, but decides that, for today, at least, she concludes her thought with a gentle smile, thinking that perhaps it may not be so bad after all. At that very moment, standing at the altar, Albin's confidence has vanished. He looks pale and sick, thinking to himself that he's so nervous he feels like he's going to puke. His internal panic spirals. He tries to run through the sequence of events. Seabass and Letitia walking down the aisle, lifting the veil, the vows, the ring, but it only makes him more anxious. He wonders why wedding ceremonies have to be so meticulously planned, admitting to himself that he's scared. Just then, the bride's entrance is announced, and his face contorts with terror. He watches, mesmerized, as Letitia approaches the altar. She is a vision in her wedding gown, her eyes closed in serene happiness as flower petals drift around her. He is left breathless by her beauty, thinking she is not merely an angel, but a goddess. Noticing his stunned expression, Letitia grows flustered, asking if there is something on her face. She decides to take his intense stare as a compliment. Nearby, Seabass remarks that while Albin is being loud, he agrees Letitia is the most beautiful woman in the world. Albin realizes with joy that he wasn't the only one whose heart felt ready to burst. Overwhelmed with happiness, he stands with his bride, Letitia Audran. The priest begins the ceremony, asking if they will take each other as husband and wife, to love one another in sickness and in health, for richer or poorer, until death do they part. Together, their voices firm, they reply, "Yes, we do." The priest then invites them to exchange rings. As they prepare, a memory of a past fear surfaces in Letitia's mind. She recalls apologizing to Albin, admitting she was scared and questioning if a fallen noble like herself truly deserved to be happy, or if it was right for her to accept this. But Albin's voice from the present shatters that memory of doubt. He declares with absolute certainty, "Of course it is." He promises to make her happy, vowing to prove he can make her the happiest person in the world. He slides the ring onto her finger as proof of his promise. Tears welling in her eyes, Letitia tells him she is truly happy, perhaps the happiest she has ever been. As they lean in to kiss, Albin gently tells her it's still too early to decide if this is her happiest moment. He explains that this is only the beginning, for there is still so much more to come. He reminds her of his vow to make her the happiest person in the world. Letitia muses that by his logic, they won't be able to decide on the best moment even as grandparents. Albin agrees, adding that the joys of being a couple have just increased. He thinks to himself that a smile suits her best. As he lifts her veil, her heart swells with emotion. Looking at him, Letitia makes a silent, resolute vow. She will do anything to protect his smile. They share a kiss, sealing their vows. As the crowd applauds, an observer remarks that Albin and Letitia Audran seem to be a very interesting couple indeed. Elsewhere, within an office, Lord Hux de Crayon addresses an elderly man as Headmaster Faust. He explains that he has decided to recommend a certain couple and asks for the headmaster's opinion. A female officer standing nearby immediately voices her opposition, questioning the decision due to the horrible rumors surrounding them. The headmaster simply listens, stroking his long beard in contemplation. Having considered the matter, the headmaster of the Royal Academy raises his head. He concedes that they are a special case and proposes a simple solution. They will be allowed to take the entrance exam. As he speaks, his eyes narrow with a calculating intensity. Outside the Audran estate, a carriage stands ready. A group of maids gathers around Letitia Barrow, their farewells filled with emotion. They plead for her to have a good life in the capital, promising to send the vegetables they cultivated together and assuring her she can return anytime should she face hardship. Letitia, seeing their distress, offers a gentle smile. She asks them not to be so sad, making a heartfelt promise to return after 3 years. Her reassurance does little to soothe them. The maids are overcome, weeping as they beg to accompany her. They cry out that they cannot bear to be separated from her and wish to continue attending to her. Their pleas are cut short by Albin Audrin's firm voice. He states plainly that the answer is no. As employees of the Audrin family, he reminds them their duty is to care for both the mansion and the territory. Despite their disappointment, the maids reflect on Letitia's strict yet kind nature. He feels a single tear form, but quickly dismisses the emotion, questioning why he would be moved when he is the head of the household. Later, inside the mansion, Duke Morrow Bertley calls out to Albin. As Albin turns to acknowledge him, he is also seen kneeling before seated Letitia, gently taking her hand in his. As they prepare to depart, Seabass approaches with a final, solemn request. He bows deeply, urging Albin to be very cautious at the academy and to contact him without hesitation should he ever need his power. He responds with a confident smile, asking who Seabass thinks has been training him for the last 6 months. With that settled, the newlyweds, now both 16, are ready to depart. Their shared goal is to learn more about the dignity required of a noble. To achieve this, they will enroll in the grand and imposing Magdala Academia Royal Academy. Upon their arrival, Duke Morrow Bertley is already there to greet them. Albin stumbles out of the carriage, complaining that the long ride felt like a form of torture. Morrow formally welcomes Albin Audrin-sama and Letitia Barrow-sama, stating that he has been waiting for them. He is greeted at the academy entrance by 2 identical butlers. They inform him that his exam is awaiting, while Letitia is told that her room has been prepared. In response to the news, Letitia places a reassuring hand on his shoulder, asking about this unexpected exam. Albin dismisses her concern, waving to Morrow in the distance, and explaining that Morrow's family simply wants to play with him a bit more. His expression shifts to a confident, knowing smirk as he internally dismisses their intentions as nothing more than a boring play. Meanwhile, on a training ground lined with targets, an examiner waits impatiently. Spotting Albin and Morrow approaching from across the courtyard, the man scowls, muttering that the damned brat has finally arrived. As they draw near, Duke Morrow formally introduces Baron Albin Audrin to the examiner, Professor Bastian. The professor sizes Albin up with contempt, silently noting his cowardly-looking face and vowing to make him fail so spectacularly that he'll be brought to his knees. Albin, however, offers a pleasant smile and a polite greeting. His calm demeanor only enrages Professor Bastian, who explodes, shouting that he was far too slow in arriving. The professor's tirade continues as he questions Albin's seriousness about enrolling, calling his tardiness absurd. Bastian believes that such an aggressive verbal assault is the best way to make arrogant types cower. He then snaps at Albin, demanding to know what's wrong with his mouth. Unfazed, Albin calmly retorts that the carriage was on time and that Bastian was simply waiting of his own accord. With the verbal sparring concluded, Albin's expression turns serious. He points forward decisively, declaring that it is time to begin the exam. He specifies the task: aim for the distant target and strike it with magic. Professor Bastian sneered, utterly convinced of the young man's failure. He declared that there was no way in hell Albin could possibly succeed. He calmly extended his hand, questioning the professor's logic. Was it truly impossible to learn magic before enrolling in the academy? Before Bastian could answer, a sphere of crackling dark energy coalesced at his fingertips as he uttered the incantation for a darkness flame. The projectile shot forward, striking the target with a concussive blast. Even he seemed taken aback by the result, a quiet sound of surprise escaping his lips. Professor Bastian stared in disbelief, sweat beading on his brow. He recognized the spell as mixed magic, a feat he himself could not perform. The question of how this was possible echoed in his mind. Turning back to the stunned professor, he asked with a confident smile whether he had passed or failed. He explained that this was the result of half a year's training with Seabass, not just in swordsmanship, but also in the ways of magic, all in preparation for the academy. The explanation only seemed to deepen Bastian's frustration. Regaining his composure, Professor Bastian announced the next phase of the exam, a mock battle. The condition was simple. If Albin could land a single hit, he would pass. In response, the young noble drew his sword. He questioned what kind of tyranny required a student to defeat a professor just to enroll, but Bastian was already charging. With a single hand on his blade, he effortlessly parried the attack, coolly asking what was wrong and pointing out his self-imposed handicap. The casual dismissal enraged the professor, who cursed him as a brat. Leaping high into the air, he looked down on his opponent, declaring him to be the inferior one in this exchange. Before Bastian could react, Albin descended, landing the single required hit. The professor fell to the ground, defeated. Standing over him, Albin calmly began to sheath his sword. The test concluded. He looked down at his defeated opponent, a confident smirk on his face, and uttered a single, dismissive word. Weak. He continued to mock the professor, questioning if he was truly worthy of his title at the Royal Academy. Albin goaded him, asking if he wanted to fight for real with swords or magic, eager for more entertainment. Suddenly, a stern voice cut through the air, declaring, "That's enough." The command came from an elderly man with a long, braided white beard who had just entered the hall. Professor Bastian, startled, immediately recognized him and cried out his name, Headmaster Faust. Albin recognized the man as Faust Melchizedek, the headmaster of the Magdala Royal Academy. He recalled the man's reputation as the strongest mage in the Varland Kingdom. The headmaster addressed him directly, confirming he was Baron Albin Audren. Faust revealed that he knew of him through a recommendation from Lord Crayon, who had described Albin as a talent that appears only once a century. On the floor, Professor Bastian struggled to his feet, pointing an accusatory finger. He pleaded with the headmaster to punish the boy immediately for injuring a teacher. In response, Headmaster Faust's expression hardened. He turned his gaze upon the professor and stated coldly that the academy has no need for incompetence, ordering him to take his things and leave at once. His words struck Bastian with the force of a physical blow. The professor's face contorted in disbelief and horror, unable to process his summary dismissal. Muttering a curse, the disgraced professor collapsed to the ground. With the matter settled, the headmaster turned his full attention back to the young noble, addressing him by name. Now, Albin Audren. He formally announced that he would permit Albin's enrollment into the Royal Academy, advising him to study hard. With a respectful bow, Albin accepted, thanking the headmaster graciously. He listened as Headmaster Faust gave him a final piece of advice, to remember his place as a student and to hold back from any further unnecessary bullying of the faculty. The warning was punctuated by the sight of the dismissed Professor Bastian, still kneeling in the distance. He internally conceded the point. The headmaster was right. With a casual stretch, he resolved to be more careful about going overboard from now on. As he began to walk away, Headmaster Faust stopped him with another instruction. He explained that Albin and one other student would be housed in a special building, just for the two of them. When Faust pointed the way, Albin was confused, noting that the men's dormitory should be in the opposite direction. He followed the headmaster's directions, arriving at a large, imposing set of double doors. Pushing the doors open, he found Letitia Barrow sitting inside, holding a cup of tea. Wondering aloud who his roommate could possibly be, he quickly put on a bright smile and extended a hand in a friendly greeting, suggesting they get along. She calmly took a sip from her cup, pointing out to him that he was mistaken. This was not the women's building. He explained that he was only following the guide's directions, which were supposedly direct orders from the headmaster. The implication of the headmaster's instructions suddenly struck him with force. The thought of sharing a room with Letitia would inevitably lead to complications. In a flash of panicked anger, he silently cursed the headmaster, questioning if the old man's goal was to arrange for her to become pregnant before they even graduated. As Letitia watched him with a gentle, knowing smile, he turned abruptly. Announcing that he would go speak with the headmaster directly, he declared his intention to request a room change. Meanwhile, in another part of the academy, Headmaster Faust sat across a chessboard from Hux de Crayon. He calmly moved a black knight into position, speaking a single name, Letitia. Lord Crayon acknowledged that he now understood the headmaster's decision, admitting he had previously thought Faust had lost his touch. He questioned if Faust had borne witness to Albin Audren's gift, a talent said to appear only once in a century, and asked if this was the reason for placing him in the same room as Letitia. The headmaster confirmed it, elaborating on Albin's nature. He is strong, noble, and has not been spoiled by his talent, but he is also merciless. A dark, evil impulse resides within his heart, compelling him to utterly crush his enemies. He is seen with Letitia, who gently cradles his head. Headmaster Faust's thoughts echo, identifying Letitia as the vessel of a wise ruler, a woman who must never be allowed to disappear from Albin's side. The headmaster, alongside Hux de Crayon, watches from afar, expressing his keen interest in seeing what will become of the two of them. Lord Crayon, seated comfortably, declares checkmate in a game. He remarks that new rules will be made for the school year before casually changing the subject, questioning if the situation with Bastian was truly acceptable, acknowledging that the professor had been bribed. Elsewhere on the academy grounds, a young male student seethes with resentment, his face twisted in a grimace as he curses those who he feels look down upon him. Nearby, a studious young woman with glasses looks up from her book, her expression hardening with resolve. She makes a silent vow to prove her worth to them all. Her resolve, however, draws unwanted attention. The resentful student suddenly grabs her, his face contorted with malice as he snarls his intention to disgrace Albin Audren and the entire academy. As he tightens his grip, the girl cries out in shock. The aggressor whirls around, demanding to know who dares to interfere. The newcomer wastes no time, striking the bully with the pommel of his sword and sending him sprawling to the ground. The defeated student can only curse Albin Audren's name as his rescuer turns to the shaken girl, calmly asking if she is all right. She looks up at her savior, a young man with short, light-colored hair, and her eyes widen in recognition as she utters his name in disbelief. Albin. Within the academy grounds, students whisper about the arrival of the infamous Baron Albin Audren, recalling rumors that he assaulted a teacher before he even enrolled. They caution one another to keep their distance. Seemingly oblivious, Albin lounges on a bench, letting out a great yawn. He rises, a flicker of concern crossing his face as he notes Letitia's tardiness. He remembers she had gone to pick flowers, but an unsettling feeling begins to creep in. Driven by this premonition, he peers around a stone wall, his expression hardening with suspicion. His fears are confirmed. He sees Letitia surrounded by a group of haughty noblewomen. The leader of the group mocks Letitia, remarking on her audacity for enrolling in an academy that is no place for a fallen noble. Albin's hand instinctively goes to the hilt of his sword as he contemplates his next move. The noblewoman leans closer, her voice dripping with contempt. She insults Letitia's perfume and compares her to a loud dog wearing human skin. Letitia endures the verbal assault in silence, her face hidden from view. Her two companions smirk, clearly enjoying Letitia's humiliation. One of them, incensed, demands to know why they should be looked down upon by someone like Letitia and raises a hand to strike her. From his hiding place, Albin's face twists in fury as he whispers Letitia's name. Before the slap can connect, a young man with light hair materializes, catching the aggressor's wrist. The three bullies are stunned by the sudden, calm intervention. His gaze is sharp and critical. He asks the trio if they can truly call themselves nobles when they gang up to bully a single person. The girl whose arm is held scoffs, declaring that Letitia is hardly worth the effort. Watching from the sidelines, Albin is utterly flabbergasted by this unexpected development. He watches as the young man who intervened asks Letitia if she is all right. The student dismisses her thanks, saying he couldn't just walk by. Letitia confirms she is fine, thanking him again while internally remarking on how handsome he is. A flash of intense irritation crosses Albin's face. He clenches his fist, his expression contorting with annoyance at the interaction. Closing the distance in an instant, he puts a possessive arm around Letitia's shoulders. He addresses the other student, thanking the pretty boy for saving his wife, but adding a thinly veiled warning that he would appreciate it if he kept his distance. Letitia looks up, surprised. The other student is taken aback, apologizing immediately and explaining that he didn't know she was married. A moment of realization dawns on him as he connects the name to Baron Albin, exclaiming that his famous exploits are a massive rumor among the commoners. Composing himself, the student extends a hand and introduces himself as Leonil Highland, inviting them to call him Leo. Albin accepts the handshake, his expression unreadable as Letitia looks on. As Leonil smiles, Letitia feels Albin's grip on her shoulder tighten painfully. She glances up at her husband, silently questioning his action. His face is a mask of cold displeasure, his eyes narrowed in silent, simmering anger. Moments later, Albin leads Letitia away, walking down a long, empty corridor and leaving the academy grounds behind them. As they walk under the stars, Letitia looks at her husband's dark expression and correctly guesses his thoughts. She asks if he's currently plotting how to drive Leonil out of the academy, adding with a gentle smile that as his wife, she can tell. She turns to him, her expression soft. She reassures him not to worry, stating plainly that she is not attracted to Leonil at all and that he doesn't need to get him away from her. She gently asks her dear husband to stop making such a face. He lets out a thoughtful sigh, a bead of sweat on his temple as he processes their conversation. Standing with Letitia outside the door to classroom F, he concedes that she is right and agrees to try and get along with Leo. His newfound resolve is immediately tested as a cheerful voice calls out. Leonil Highland appears, brightly greeting Baron Audrin and Mrs. Letitia, much to Albin's visible displeasure. The young man continues, expressing his delight that they are all in the same class. Letitia, however, places a hand on his shoulder, firmly reminding him to be quiet inside the classroom. Inside, the classroom is a tableau of diverse students. Letitia stands with her arms crossed, surveying her new classmates with a stern, observant gaze. Their quiet observation is broken by a woman bursting in with theatrical energy. She introduces herself as Paula Velvet, the professor for Class F. As she greets them, Letitia notes her apparent lack of energy, and another student's hand shoots up with a question. Before she can continue, a student named Ivan stands to voice a complaint. He questions why he, from the honorable Scottish ducal family, is in the same class as those with no proper title or rank. His disdainful words draw the ire of a spiky-haired student, who challenges his assertion that they are beneath him. His arrogant words draw an immediate, physical response. The spiky-haired student leaps onto a nearby windowsill, startling a female student as he closes the distance to Ivan. Perched on the windowsill, the spiky-haired student reminds Ivan of the headmaster's words. Titles are to be forgotten at school. He points out that the noble must have skipped the entrance ceremony. Ivan retorts that he doesn't care and insults the other student for being a lowborn. Nearby, the young woman who had watched him leap trembles slightly, finding the confrontational student to be an interesting fellow. As she and the other students watched the tense standoff, their professor, Paula Velvet, suddenly clapped her hands together, silencing the room. With a cheerful expression, she announced that first, she had something she wanted everyone to do. She held up a piece of chalk, explaining that the academy had implemented some new rules this year, rules that would be decided from among all of them. With a flourish, she drew a crown on the blackboard and declared that they would have to decide on a king who would have control over the class. The declaration left Albin, Letitia, and Leonil utterly bewildered. They could only stare in confusion, quietly questioning the term king. Their confusion quickly turned to outrage. Ivan slammed his hand on his desk, demanding she stop messing around and protesting that he had heard nothing about this before enrolling. Unfazed, Professor Velvet continued, adding the unfortunate detail that the remaining 9 students would have to swear absolute obedience to the king until graduation. While another student trembled at the implications, a dark-skinned young man with long, light hair leaned back in his chair with a relaxed smile. He calmly addressed the professor, acknowledging that they were new rules, and asked how they were supposed to decide who the king would be. In response, she turned back to the board, stating that she would leave the decision entirely up to them. They could talk it out, compete with academics, or stamina, or even use violence or money. She didn't mind how they did it, so long as no one was killed. She then added a critical stipulation with a sly smile. If a king had not been chosen within 1 month, all of them would be expelled. The professor's smile widened as she encouraged them all to use everything they had learned so far and knock the others down a peg or two. Her words were met with varied expressions. Letitia's concern, Ivan's stern glare, and the dark-skinned student's intrigued smirk. Her challenge was immediately met. A boisterous student, identified as Rowan Steradian from seat number 6, shot to his feet. He slammed his fist on his desk and roared a proposal. Everyone should duel, and the last one standing would be the strongest, the only one fit to become king. His savage proposal drew immediate and varied reactions. A young woman named Estelle Appleberry, seated as number 2, found the idea amusingly barbaric, remarking that the class king should obviously be someone elegant and pure. In contrast, the student in seat number 1, Shanoa Grain, timidly clasped her hands and pleaded for the fighting to stop before it could even begin. Her plea was ignored by Matthias Wolf, seat number 4. He declared that the richest person holds all the power, and since that was him, everyone should be under his rule. He asserted that these are simply the rules of the world. Another student, Lockie Azalea from seat 5, offered a much more carefree opinion, cheerfully suggesting that she thought anyone would be fine for the role. Amidst the chatter, Carla Rexon of seat 7 remained silent and still, her masked face betraying no emotion as she observed her classmates. Cutting through the varied opinions, Ivan Scottish from seat 3 adjusted his glasses. He stated coolly that a king is defined by authority, and since everyone else present was a lowborn, they inherently lacked it. His gaze fell upon the other nobles, Albin, Letitia, and Leonil. His words hung in the air of the grand, star-ceilinged classroom. Letitia Audrin considered the concept of authority, then turned to face Ivan directly. She countered his claim, asking if there wasn't someone present who held even more authority than him. She then addressed Professor Velvet, asking for permission to recommend someone other than herself. With the professor's silent acquiescence, Letitia announced that she had one thing to say. She knew who was truly fit to be this class's king. Moving to Albin's side, she took his arm and declared with a radiant smile that it could only be her husband, Albin Audrin. The proclamation sent a wave of shock and confusion through the other students. Before anyone could fully process the nomination, Leonil Highland stepped forward, raising a hand placatingly. He cheerfully suggested that, for now, they should have a preliminary round to settle who the strongest is first. Letitia continues her endorsement, a confident smile on her face as she raises a finger. She declares that without a doubt, this quality is also part of what makes him Albin. It doesn't matter how many people he fights, she insists he will not lose. Her absolute certainty catches Albin completely off guard. His eyes widen in disbelief, a single bead of sweat forming as he processes her words. His shock gives way to pure exasperation. As the other candidates, Rowan, Ivan, and Matthias, look on, Albin throws his head back and wails, lamenting that this whole situation is an immense pain. Inside a classroom, Ivan Scottish expresses his outrage. He finds the suggestion that the notoriously lazy Baron Audrin is the most fitting candidate to become the king to be utterly absurd. Beside him, Letitia Barrow smiles knowingly, challenging Ivan directly. If he doubts it, she suggests he should put to the test and face Albin himself. Following her provocation, the scene shifts to an arena where the challenge has been accepted. 2 of Ivan's companions, Rowan Steradian and Matthias Wolf, are already lying defeated on the ground as Ivan looks on, stunned. The victor, Albin Audrin, stands with a gloved hand over his face, sweating. He sighs to himself, thinking what a pain this all is. His opponents, however, are not all down. Matthias Wolf calls out to him, warning that he won't be holding back. Rowan Steradian chimes in, asking to fight Albin one-on-one first. He repeats his sentiment under his breath, acknowledging the tiresome situation. But his demeanor shifts as he thinks of his wife's expectations, which he cannot betray. A confident smirk forms on his face. He concludes that to completely crush a bunch of insects, one must get them all at once. He then issues his own challenge. All 3 of them are to come at it. Accepting his terms, the 3 students ready themselves for a coordinated assault. The fight begins. Ivan, Rowan, and Matthias lunge at Albin from 3 different directions, weapons poised to strike. As they close in, Albin smirks, noting internally that their killing intent isn't half bad. He meets their combined assault with a single, powerful block, roaring that their efforts are not enough. The force of the impact sends the attackers flying backward, their weapons scattered. In an instant, the battle is decided. Rowan and Matthias lie defeated on the ground. From the stands, Letitia and Estelle observe the outcome. The only one left standing is Ivan, who stares in utter disbelief, his hand trembling as he clenches it into a fist, cursing his powerlessness. He unleashes his magic, casting an aqua whip. As the watery tendrils lash out, Letitia announces from the sidelines that the dueling arena is protected by a magic circle that nullifies pain and death, encouraging them to fight with lethal intent. He seems shocked that Albin is already using magic, boasting that as a member of the Scottish ducal family, such skills are only natural for him. The attack is effortlessly deflected. Albin, with a dismissive question, closes the distance in a blur of motion. In a flash, Albin is behind his opponent, sword at the ready, declaring the magic a mere parlor trick. Ivan is disarmed and defeated. From her seat, Letitia cheers with delight, proclaiming Ivan's Scottish dead. He stands victorious, announcing the duel's conclusion. Letitia praises his good work, and he playfully asks for more, but she tells him to save it for when they return to their room. Her attention then shifts to the other spectators, startling Estelle Appleberry. Letitia issues a challenge to the crowd. Will they all concede, or will they fight? The noblewoman recoils in terror, shouting that it's a joke. She vehemently refuses, declaring there is no way she would fight a monster like it. Letitia, however, looks toward Albin, her expression serious. She confesses that after witnessing his fight, she felt a strong desire to test her own skills. Her hand reaches for his. She murmurs that she has been trying to avoid this outcome, but it seems this story is compelling her to fight him. The scene shifts to a vision of the future. Albin lies defeated on the ground as Leonil Hylant stands over him. Letitia's thoughts identify Leonil as the protagonist of this fantasy novel, the one who will eventually lead her to ruin. He and his partner, Carla, face their opponent. Albin Audrin hovered before them, sword at his side, and asked if the two were prepared for what was to come. In response, Leonil calmly stated that he was fine to begin whenever. Albin's lips curled into a confident smirk as he acknowledged the young man's readiness, addressing him as Leo. He couldn't lose this competition, he thought to himself. With a challenging glint in his eye, he mentally dared the so-called protagonist to show him what he was capable of. With a shout, Albin declared the match had begun. He wasted no time, firing a blast of energy from his palm. Leonil, however, was just as quick, raising his sword to deflect the attack with a sharp clang. The deflection was merely the opening move. The two warriors closed the distance in an instant, their blades meeting in a rapid exchange before Albin twisted his body, narrowly avoiding a powerful swing from Leonil's sword. Pausing for a breath, Albin offered a compliment, admitting that Leonil's skill was quite good. Leonil, a look of slight surprise on his face, replied that he could say the same. Their blades locked once more. Albin found it a pain. Even when he conservatively estimated his opponent's abilities, they were already fighting on equal footing. He wondered if this was the corrective power of the protagonist at work, a force that was already proving to be too much. He shouted out to Leonil, his voice a mix of admiration and frustration. It was amazing, he conceded, that Leonil could keep pace with him even when they were fighting to the death. From across the arena, Leonil replied that he was very honored by the praise. Watching from the sidelines, Estelle Appleberry was captivated by the spectacle, murmuring in amazement. Beside her, Letitia Barrow watched with a faint, knowing smile, as if she already understood the significance of the display. Back in the arena, Albin crouched low, his expression hardening. He declared that out of respect for Leonil's skills, he was going to take the fight a little more seriously now. He brings his sword down with blinding speed. Leonil can only grunt in surprise, his eyes wide as the blade descends upon him. The force of the blow shatters Leonil's guard. With a wild grin, Albin declares the match over. But Leonil meets the strike, his own blade holding firm against the overwhelming assault. The unexpected resistance catches Albin off guard as Leonil calmly acknowledges his opponent's true power. Their blades remain locked, sparks flying between them. A wide, almost unhinged smile spreads across Albin's face, his eyes gleaming with the thrill of a true challenge. He breaks the stalemate with a powerful shove and unleashes a whirlwind of strikes. The sheer velocity of the attack sends Leonil reeling backward, a flash of light marking the impact that throws him off his feet. As Leonil's body hits the ground, motionless, Carla Rexon rushes forward, her voice filled with shock as she declares Leonil Hylant dead. From the stands, Letitia and Estelle watch the grim outcome. The proctor, Paula Velvet, officially ends the duel, her voice ringing out across the arena as she proclaims Albin Audrin the winner. The announcement seems to startle Albin, who looks up with a bewildered expression. But Leonil is not dead. He crouches on the ground, admitting to Baron Audrin that he was completely outmatched and couldn't keep up. He observes that Albin had to get serious midway through the fight. The comment infuriates Albin, who internally curses him, wondering how Leonil is so strong without any training. He rises to his feet, explaining that while he always had confidence in his sword skills, this duel has allowed him to truly comprehend his own abilities. Albin, regaining his composure, agrees, admitting that he too had a long way to go. A thoughtful smile touches Albin's lips. He reaffirms his earlier assessment. Leonil Hylant is dangerous. He knows that if Leonil surpasses him, just as the protagonist did in the novel, his own ruin will be inevitable. He stared at his defeated opponent, a single, troubling thought echoing in his mind. Could he truly allow this dangerous individual to continue on his path unchecked? As Albin wrestled with this internal conflict, Leonil Hylant's expression hardened with newfound resolve. He had come to a decision. He then sheathed his sword with a decisive click and approached Albin, who watched with clear confusion as the other student extended a hand toward him. But instead of a handshake, Leonil dropped to one knee. To Albin's complete astonishment, he bowed his head and made a solemn vow, declaring that he would become Albin's knight. He looked up, his gaze unwavering, and continued his proclamation. He announced that he would also recommend Baron Albin Audrin for an even greater role. His voice rang out across the arena for all to hear, nominating Albin to become the class king. The declaration sent a wave of shock through the crowd of students watching from the stands. Strolling through the city streets, Albin Audrin reflects on his recent fortune. He was meant to be destroyed by Leonil Hylant, the so-called king, but such concerns feel distant now. His victory in the duel has earned him a prize far greater, a date with Letitia. He savors a bite of food offered by Letitia, finding it exceptionally delicious simply because she is the one feeding him. She asks if he likes it, and he confirms he does. Blushing, Letitia explains that it's in return for him feeding her earlier. Their public display of affection draws the attention of two women nearby, who gossip about the students from the Prince's Academy being so intimate in broad daylight. Hearing their whispers, Letitia lowers her gaze, a hint of embarrassment on her face. Noticing her discomfort, Albin quickly takes her hand. He suggests they leave, mentioning he heard of a good tea shop in a nearby alley, and gently leads her away from the prying eyes. Her spirits lifted, Letitia points ahead with a bright smile, announcing that they have found the shop. Albin looks toward the building she indicated. From inside the tea shop, a young attendant peeks out the door. She sees Albin with a girl and seems to recognize him. Her eyes then shift as she identifies another person nearby as her classmate, Shanoa. A bell jingles as Albin and Letitia step inside. A kindly woman in an apron greets them warmly, welcoming them and inviting them to take any seat they like. The young attendant from before approaches the woman, her mother, informing her that preparations are complete. The mother's eyes fall upon the crest on Albin's uniform, and she remarks that he must be a student from the Royal Academy. The young attendant peeks through a curtain, her expression filled with a mixture of awe and apprehension as she watches the two nobles. Suddenly, Shanoa Grain steps forward, greeting them with a cheerful smile. The attendant freezes in shock, stammering their titles. B. Baron Audrin and Letitia. She demands to know why they are here. Her mother, however, remains calm, simply asking Shanoa if the newcomers are her school friends. The young attendant, apologizing for the wait, places a cup of tea and a scone on the table. As Letitia takes in the aroma, she correctly identifies the drink as Rahina tea from the Siren Highlands, much to the attendant's astonishment. The girl confirms it, impressed, and Letitia admits to being quite particular when it comes to tea. Albin takes a sip and agrees, remarking that it's delicious and pairs perfectly with the scone. Letitia then compliments Shanoa on her impressive skill, and the shop owner adds that the girl has always been a fast learner with many talents. The young attendant listens to the praise, visibly touched. This moment of praise brings a memory to the attendant's mind. She recalls her mother insisting that she go to a good school to secure a stable job, a suggestion her younger self met with a pained cry of protest. Her younger self had argued fiercely, declaring her intention to continue running the shop, reminding her mother that it was the precious place their father had left for them. The memory fades. Back in the present, Shanoa asks the attendant an unexpected question. Is she interested in becoming a king? The girl is flustered, stammering that she isn't the type to lead others, while Albin looks on thoughtfully. Letitia, however, offers a warm smile to the attendant. She declares that she loves the shop and will become a regular customer from now on, leaving the girl utterly surprised. Letitia adds that she feels they can get along well. As their visit concludes, Letitia asks Shanoa to make tea for her again after school the next day. Albin readily agrees, reaffirming how good the tea was. From outside, the cozy shop stands under the evening sky. The following day, however, Albin is alone, meticulously polishing his sword. He laments his bad luck, frustrated that he's the only one who can't go because of his duties, just after they've made plans. His solitary work is suddenly interrupted by a firm knock at the door. He turns, a questioning look on his face, wondering who the visitor could be. He opened the door to find a cheerful young woman standing before him. She greeted him by name, announcing she had come to play. His eyes widened in recognition of his visitor, Laki Azalea. She breezed past him into the room, remarking on the size of his private dormitory, reminding him that she had told him she was coming. She insisted he should be happy that such a cute girl had gone to the trouble of visiting him. Albin, hand resting on the hilt of his sword, simply asked what she wanted. Laki suggested they get to know each other now, admitting she was curious about him. Albin flatly rejected the idea, stating he wasn't happy to see her at all and knew nothing about her. His hand tightened into a fist. He thought to himself that if she wanted to act so friendly, she should at least do it when Letitia was present. He had a strong feeling he would not get along with this girl. Suddenly, she wrapped her arms around him from behind, dismissing his concerns. She pointed out that he and Letitia were just a fake couple, with no real love between them. She leaned in close, her fingers brushing his cheek as she explained her reasoning. It was obvious from their interactions in class that he was still a virgin, she claimed, and that Letitia seemed like a difficult person to approach romantically. Taking his hand, Laki made a direct proposition. She knew he wanted to graduate, and since he couldn't, she would be his substitute and do it for him. She pressed her advantage, revealing that she knew Letitia was out in the city and wouldn't be returning for some time. Growing bolder, she grabbed the front of his shirt, pulling him closer. She promised that while they had the opportunity, she would do anything he wanted. His patience finally snapped. A menacing, shadowy aura with glowing eyes erupted behind him as he shoved her away. He coldly ordered her to get away from him, threatening to kill her if she didn't. Laki, however, simply sighed, a faint, amused smile on her lips. She questions his resistance, asking why he's making things so difficult. With a confident smile, she declares that he will surely become the king of Class F, especially with Letitia by his side to support him. She steps closer, explaining that since she lacks power and authority, she desires the queen's throne for herself. She playfully challenges him to try his best not to be conquered by her, adding that this is far from over. Just then, Letitia appears at the doorway, calling his name. She asks if he had a visitor, her senses picking up a lingering presence in the air. Her eyes fall upon Albin, who is sitting dejectedly on his bed, clutching his sword. He confesses that Laki had been there, attempting to set a honey trap, and that he managed to drive her away. Letitia reacts with stunned disbelief. Her shock gives way to a sharp inquiry. She asks if he saw Laki, clarifying if he saw her unclothed. His gaze averted, Albin quietly confirms that he did. Letitia's voice grows colder as she presses further, demanding to know if he touched her. He quickly corrects her, stating that Laki was the one who touched him. The revelation leaves Letitia momentarily speechless. She blurts out a question, asking if he still looks like a virgin. Albin, taken aback, remarks that Laki seemed to know just by looking at him. A look of determination crosses her face. She takes a firm step forward, declaring that now is the time. Albin can only echo her words in confusion. As she moves towards a dresser, she acknowledges his usual consideration for her feelings, but insists that the current situation is dire. He watches her, a sense of apprehension growing within him as the sound of a drawer sliding open fills the room. He realizes with a start what she might be implying for the night ahead. He watched as Letitia stood before him, her nightgown illuminated by the soft light. With a determined expression, she declared that she would wager her own body. Her gaze was unwavering, a faint blush coloring her cheeks as she held his stare. She leaned in, her lips meeting his. As she held him close, she whispered that as Letitia was seducing him, asking if he truly didn't want her. His mind drifted back to that night under the full moon. He recalled passing his exam, a moment when his desire for her had been overwhelming. The following day, the two sat together, a new intimacy evident between them. From a distance, Matthias, Estelle, and Shanoa watched, their expressions a mixture of shock and curiosity. From their vantage point, his friends discussed the change. Matthias commented that their aura felt different. Shanoa agreed, noting they seemed more confident than before. Estelle simply wondered what could have happened between them. Their speculation was cut short as Estelle burst into the room with a cheerful morning greeting for Albin. She teased him, suggesting he must have been unable to sleep the previous night from thinking about her. She continued, proposing they do something together that day. Her cheerful advance was met with stony silence from both Letitia and Albin, whose expressions had turned serious. With a flourish, Estelle snapped her fingers, creating a small spark of light in the air between them. A clear and playful challenge. She laughed, declaring that Letitia had let her guard down, calling her a little kitten who didn't even know how to tempt a man. Letitia, however, simply watched her with a faint, knowing smile. She stares down at her rival, a sharp glint in her eyes. She questions Estelle, asking if she truly believes her to be some naive, clueless girl. Estelle is taken aback, a small exclamation escaping her lips. Leaning in closer, she concedes that Estelle managed to make the first move, finding it unexpectedly impressive. Nearby, Leonil Hylant watches the tense exchange, utterly bewildered by the situation. He turns to Albin Audrin for an explanation, addressing him as Baron Audrin, but Albin cuts him off, curtly stating that it's a hassle and not to ask. The two women take their seats, an intense, silent standoff beginning between them. Leonil then pledges his loyalty, reminding Albin that he is his knight and will be there for him should any trouble arise. He asks directly if Albin has any ambition to become the king. Albin dismisses the idea, claiming he isn't suited for the role. Instead, he declares his true desire, to grow stronger and one day surpass Leonil himself. As he speaks, a strange feeling washes over him. He realizes with a chilling certainty that the world itself seems to be conspiring against him, pushing for Leonil to be the one to defeat him. His intense stare leaves Leonil feeling uneasy. Sensing that their current dynamic is unsustainable, Leonil asks Albin to train with him sometime, determined to prove his worth. He internally agrees, viewing it as a necessary part of his ongoing observation. Leonil, however, takes his consideration as acceptance and erupts with joy, thanking him profusely and calling him his ideal king. The sheer brightness of Leonil's sincerity is almost overwhelming for Albin. The moment is broken when Ivan Scottish slams his hand on their table. Leonil immediately questions if he's there to protest the results of their duel. From her seat, Shano Grain calls out to Ivan. A voice from the front of the classroom then commands everyone to listen. It is Ivan who stands before the class. He announces to everyone that he has a proposal concerning the election of the king. A confident, knowing smile spreads across his face as he prepares to continue. At the entrance to the Akatsuki dungeon, a place with a recommended level of 20 to 22, Ivan Scottish addresses the assembled students. He clarifies the terms of their contest, The one they call king must possess strength, intelligence, and courage. As proof of these qualities, whoever successfully brings back a herbal potion from the dungeon's deepest reaches will be acknowledged as the most courageous victor. He then turns his attention to Letitia and Shanoa, taking Letitia's hand as he asks if they are certain they do not wish to participate. Letitia calmly affirms their decision. As the group prepares, Shanoa expresses her confidence, while Letitia declares that Albin will be the first to conquer the dungeon. With a heavy thud, the gates swing open, and the F-class herbal potion scramble officially begins. Just inside, a hulking, horned goblin lets out a guttural roar. Rowan Steradian steps forward eagerly, weapon raised, boasting that this time he will be the one to shine. Estelle Appleberry calls out from behind, chiding him for getting excited over a mere croco goblin. She looks down with a faint, dismissive smile, muttering that they are simply in her way. Before anyone can react, Estelle leaps forward, bringing a massive bandage club down upon the goblin's head. The creature's skull shatters on impact, stunning Matthias and Rowan into silence as they witness the raw display of power. The force of her blow obliterates the goblin entirely. As she lands, she coolly commands its remains to scatter. Her classmates are aghast at her strength, recognizing her as the rumored good game girl. Estelle, however, simply thanks the creature for the warm-up. While the others are reeling from the display, Albin Audrin seizes the opportunity, sprinting past them deeper into the dungeon. Estelle calls out for him to wait, thanking him for clearing the path. He glances back, acknowledging her praise of his impressive speed. Watching from a distance, Ivan Scottish smirks. He concedes that in terms of pure movement, he cannot match Albin. However, he reflects that the outcome will be different if he resorts to using speed-enhancing magic. His expression hardens as he wonders aloud, addressing the absent Baron Audrin, questioning if he truly has no intention of backing down from the contest for the king's throne. Within the dungeon, Albin Audrin addresses his unseen rival, apologizing for the delay. He muses that there are others who seem displeased with the current power dynamic between the two of them. His thoughts are interrupted by the cheerful arrival of Estelle Appleberry and Leonil Hylant, who grandly introduces himself as the knight. Ivan Scottish follows them, a look of apprehension on his face, while Albin's expression sours at the intrusion. Estelle ignores his mood, declaring that it is now their turn and that they should all proceed into the deeper section together. Muttering under his breath about the noise, Albin joins the others as they run forward into the dungeon's depths. They emerge into a massive, empty cavern. Stepping into the vast space, Albin confirms that this is the deepest part of the dungeon, but notes the conspicuous absence of any herbal potions. As Estelle wonders if this means one is about to appear, Ivan voices his suspicion, questioning why teleportation magic would be present in such a place. Suddenly, his eyes widen. A brilliant light erupts from the ground. Albin shouts a warning for everyone to get back, specifically calling to Laki as he shoves her out of the path of a violent magical burst. The blast slams into the ceiling, showering the area with falling rock. Amidst the chaos, Leonil calls out to check if everyone is safe. Ivan can only stare in stunned silence. As the dust begins to clear, a hulking silhouette takes form. A massive, one-eyed monster stands before them, an unconscious person draped over its shoulder. Ivan breathes its name in disbelief, a cyclops. Estelle and Laki look up at the creature, stunned. Estelle wonders aloud how such a rare monster could possibly be here. The cyclops glares down, its single eye wide with feral intensity. Ivan stares in open-mouthed horror, realizing with dawning dread that this situation is completely different from the information they were given. He glances toward Albin, who is still on the floor from his evasive maneuver. He reacted instantly, slamming his fist into the cavern floor. The ground erupted with a deafening crack, the force of the impact staggering the massive cyclops. The monster recovered quickly, swatting Ivan through the air. His classmates cried out his name in alarm, but their shock was cut short by a sudden, dark blur. Albin Audrin moved with impossible speed, his face twisted into a predatory grin as he intercepted the beast. He sneered, dismissing the powerful creature as nothing more than a lump of flesh that shouldn't get cocky. He didn't spare the monster another glance, instead issuing swift commands to his companions. He ordered Laki to take care of Ivan, to which she agreed. Then, his sharp gaze fell upon Leonil. With a confident smirk, Albin told Leo to follow him, declaring it was time to teach the creature a lesson. Estelle watched, utterly mesmerized by his sudden transformation. Leonil's face hardened with resolve as he agreed to Albin's command. In that moment, the Cyclops' grip tightened on the unconscious figure it carried. Albin drew his blade, his posture radiating lethal intent as he addressed his companion with a title of profound reverence. "My king."